What's up, everyone? It's December 26th of 2024, and welcome back. My name is Derek. In this video, we'll be decoding the passage of Rickey Henderson, the all-time Major League stolen base king, and a little bit of a Christmas-themed video here today. Of course, a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone out there. Hope you were able to enjoy the day, even if you had to spend it with family. Now, in this video, as always, we will use the language of Gematria and numerology, particularly through date durations, to explain the marvelous synchronicity in this death on December 20th. Rickey Henderson, who called himself the greatest of all time after breaking the stolen base record back in 1991, passes away at the age of 65. And before we talk about any numbers associated with this, let's talk a little bit about the synchronicity around this. Now, Cody did a great video on Rickey Henderson a few days ago, but I want to take a different angle on this and look more closely at the numerology involved, because there's some startling alignments in this. And we all start with the fact that Rickey Henderson was known as the Man of Steel. And again, he has the Major League record for most stolen bases, which might not ever be broken, or may not for a very long time, actually. 1,406 stolen bases. And later in this video, you'll learn about the number 146 and why it's so significant. But the fact that he was known as the Man of Steel is one of the first things that stuck out to me. Back in the year 2013, a Superman film called Man of Steel was released. The same day that Rickey Henderson died, which was December 20th of 2024, a new trailer dropped for the next Superman film. Notice here on YouTube, December 20th, the same day that Rickey died, was the same date they uploaded the new Superman trailer. And again, the nickname of Superman, the Man of Steel, the same as Rickey Henderson. If you instead look at his date of birth, we find that Rickey was born on Christmas Day. Furthermore, he was even born in the back seat of an Oldsmobile. So a guy who was essentially born for speed, born in a car, stealing bases during his career. Well, on the same day he died, a terror attack occurred at Magdeburg Christmas Market in Germany, where a man drove a car through a crowd, killing at least 5 people. And what I noticed about this is that the footage that we got of this attack was very sped up, almost as if to highlight the speed that Rickey Henderson had on the base paths. And the fact that this man was born on Christmas and became known as an expert stealer brings us to this fact. How the Grinch Stole Christmas, a book published by Dr. Seuss way back in the 50s. In the year 2000, actor Jim Carrey played the Grinch in the film adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This was actually the first movie that was ever made from a Dr. Seuss book. And the reason I bring this up is because on the same day that Rickey Henderson died, Jim Carrey, who played the Grinch, starred in his first Hollywood film in nearly 3 years. December 20th of 2024 is when the film Sonic 3 was released here in the United States. Now, in this film, Jim Carrey plays a pair of villains, but the main villain is a guy named Dr. Robotnik. Well, How the Grinch Stole Christmas was written by Dr. Seuss. And the man who was accused of carrying out the attack at the Magdeburg Christmas market was also said to be a doctor, a 50-year-old doctor from Saudi Arabia. So the synchronicity here just explodes the more layers you unpeel from this onion. But, of course, there's more. And what I want to look at next is this riddle regarding the greatest of all time. Now, back in 1991, Rickey Henderson broke Lou Brock's all-time stolen base record in Major League Baseball. And the best part about this is that they gave him a microphone after he broke the record, and he proclaimed himself to be the greatest of all time. Just listen to this.
Lou Brock was a symbol of great base stealing, but today I'm the greatest of all time. Thank you.
So maybe modesty wasn't Rickey's strong suit, but it seems like everyone loved him for it. Pretty wild character in the game and well-beloved in the sport of baseball. So let's think about this for a second. Greatest of all time. In sports, people who are called the greatest of all time are often referred to as the GOAT, as these are the first letters of each word, G-O-A-T, the GOAT. Well, in astrology, the goat is the symbol for the sign of Capricorn. This year, Capricorn began early morning of December 21st. And it wasn't until December 21st that we learned about the death of Rickey Henderson. As you'll see here, published the night of December 21st. So what this means is that Rickey Henderson died on December 20th. However, news did not break until the start of Capricorn, which is the goat sign. And the goat, the same thing that Rickey proclaimed himself to be. Rickey broke the record while playing for the Oakland Athletics, and although he played for 9 different teams, he had 3 different stints with the A's, so this is the team that he's most closely identified with. And of course, the Oakland A's, one of the few teams that wear green in the major leagues. Green, the color of Christmas. We had the attack in Magdeburg, and if you look at the flag of Magdeburg, we see the colors of Christmas, red and green. In the standard alphabetic order, athletics equals 97, while in reverse reduction, Oakland Athletics equals 97. With capital letters, the name Rickey also equals 97. Well, back in 1991, actually 2 years before he broke the record in 1991, Rickey Henderson was traded back to the Athletics for his second stint with the team. That trade occurred exactly 97 weeks before he broke the record. And we'll talk about the date of this trade very soon because this is important as well, as it occurred on the summer solstice. However, we can also get a different measurement, 22 months and 10 days from that trade to his record breaking. Well, 221 is the ordinal gematria of the phrase, the greatest of all time. 221. Rickey Henderson also has strong numeric links to Dr. Seuss, as we will explore. Henderson was born 20,021 days after Dr. Seuss. And now, again, he's the greatest of all time, which equals 221. So Henderson gets traded back to the Oakland Athletics on the summer solstice of 1989, June 21st. And then he goes on to die on the cusp of the winter solstice. Now, what makes this so fascinating? Well, once again, Rickey played for the Oakland A's. In October of 2024, The Oakland A's played their final game in in Oakland, prior to their move to Las Vegas. On October 9th, the Tropicana Las Vegas was destroyed to make way for the new A's ballpark. And on that exact same day, October 9th, Hurricane Milton struck Florida and destroyed the roof on Tropicana Field, which is the Major League ballpark for the Tampa Bay Rays. And this is one of the most startling synchronicities that we've looked at. And it's one that's completely undeniable. Here we have man demolishing the Tropicana in Las Vegas on the same day that Mother Nature destroys the Tropicana Field. But what is the Tropicana really referring to? Because if you consider that Ricky was traded on the summer solstice and then died on the winter solstice, the solstice is when the sun is directly overhead one of the tropics. So the way I read this is a riddle connected to the solstices. And just 73 days after these Tropicanas were destroyed is when Ricky Henderson died. Ricky was said to die in East Bay, California, originally. East Bay has ordinal gematria of 73. In reverse, both winter and summer sum to 73. And again, Ricky dies 73 days after the twin tropics were destroyed on the winter solstice. In reduction, the phrase the twin tropics also equals 73. This is a number connected to death, as the phrases sacrifice and ritual sacrifice both equal 73. Well, if you measure from the death of Ricky Henderson to the next birthday of Dr. Seuss, you also get a span of 73 days. Henderson's death was also 293 days after the last birthday of Dr. Theodore Seuss Geisel. And notice how in reverse gematria, Dr. Theodore Seuss Geisel sums to 293. So, of course, it's no coincidence at all that a doctor is who drove through the Christmas market on the same day as Ricky's death. And to top it off, this doctor was known as Talib A. Due to German privacy laws, they were not allowed to originally disclose his last name. So they just told us it was the initial A, which is mind-boggling because the initial A is what Ricky Henderson wore for most of his career, playing for the Oakland A's. So Ricky Henderson was born in Chicago, Illinois. Now, Chicago, Illinois is the largest city in America in the Central Time Zone. And this year, Chicago celebrated the winter solstice at 3:21 in the morning on December 21st. And remember, although Ricky died before this time, news of his death was not published until after it. Well, the number 321 stood out because in the standard alphabetic order, Ricky's full name, Ricky Nelson Henley Hernandez, or Henderson, sums to 321. The man who portrayed the Grinch on the silver screen, Jim Carrey, was born 321 days after the birthday of Dr. Seuss. And I thought it was interesting that the name Jim Carrey, a.k.a. the Grinch who stole Christmas, his name is a super match with the last name Henderson, who was the Man of Steel born on Christmas. In Latin gematria, which is the cipher I continue to claim is the most significant in gematria, this cipher, also known as Agrippa's key, as The origin of this method traces back to the 17th century or even the 16th century with an author named Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. In this method, the word Christmas equals 411. Not only was Ricky Henderson born on Christmas, but also look at his birth numerology. 12 plus 25 plus 19 plus 58 gives us a sum of 114, which are the same digits in the Gematria of Christmas. And if you measure again from the birthday of Dr. Seuss to the birthday of Jim Carrey, notice the 114 in the digits, right? 21140. There's another interesting alignment with this as well, because they were also born exactly 3,020 weeks apart. And here we have the digits 32, like the birthday of Dr. Seuss, March 2nd, or 3-2. Now, earlier I mentioned Ricky Henderson's career stolen base total, 1,406. Think about how on Christmas Day, Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, whose name in the reverse order equals 146. Ricky went on to die on the cusp of Capricorn, the greatest of all time, the goat, dying as the goat sign came into conjunction with the sun. In reverse, Capricorn also equals 146. But look at this. Dr. Seuss died 146 days after Ricky Henderson broke the stolen base record. And when he broke that record, Dr. Seuss was exactly 1,046 months old. Henderson also broke the record 14 weeks and 6 days after Jim Carrey's birthday. And again, he went on to steal a total of 1,406 bases. Most of those steals came during his time playing in Oakland, California, a city that sums to 146 ordinal. And the team's nickname, the Athletics, equals 146 in reverse. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this passing is all synced up with the destruction of the twin tropicanas, the casino and the ballpark, on the date of a hurricane. And in reverse, both Tropicana and Hurricane equal 146. So this right here is rather staggering. This 146 connection to Dr. Seuss completely blew me away. And it just makes sense, doesn't it? The Grinch who stole Christmas. This stealer born on Christmas. And when I say it out loud that way, the stealer, right? This reminds me of Franco Harris, the former Pittsburgh Steeler running back. So this guy was a football player who played running back. Ricky Henderson, a runner on the base paths. And he played for the Steelers. Well, look at the date that Franco Harris died, December 20th. December 20th, the same day that Ricky Henderson dies. Now, although most of us celebrate Jesus' birthday on Christmas, a lot of Christians actually believe that Jesus was born on September 11th, which is quite intriguing, right? This is a big day in modern American history. We had the 9/11 terror attacks on that very day. Well, consider how the date of the 9/11 attacks would be written in most parts of the world, particularly Germany, where we had the Christmas car attack. This date would be written as 01119 internationally. And in numerology, with the 0 dropped, this gives us the digits 1119. Well, when actor Jim Carrey was born, Ricky Henderson was 1,119 days old. When the 2013 film Man of Steel came out, it was during Brown Lunation number 1119. And if you measure from the release of that film to the death of Ricky Henderson, it was 11 years and 190 days later. So this is another strong connection here with a 4-digit number that totally blew me away. Interesting note in the chat here. Username suppersready8880. Actually, that's an appropriate number in your name for the next part of this decode. Because Ricky Henderson had a connection to this earthquake code. Now, last week, I made a video on this earthquake that occurred in the island nation in Vanuatu. And in that video, I talk about the Buffalo Bills. Well, the next day, we got a plane crash at the home of a Buffalo Bills player. And this is part of the riddle that led into Ricky Henderson's death, because notice how plane crash equals 173. The name Ricky Henderson also equals 173 in the alphabetic order. Plane crash also equals 97, and this was a number we talked about at the top of the decode. Ricky played for the Athletics, which equals 97. He died in relation to the destruction of the Tropicanas, Tropicana 97. So, the earthquake is really what kicked this string of events off. You know, I had a very slow news week, aside from this assassination. I went like 2 weeks with not a whole lot of work on the channel, and then all of these things started happening at once. So I want you to think about this. Ricky Henderson, remember that trade that occurred on the summer solstice back in 1989? Well, later that year, 89, the Oakland Athletics won the World Series. Now, this World Series went down in history because Game 3 of the World Series that year was interrupted by the Loma Prieta earthquake that struck the San Francisco area. And it just so happens that both of these teams, Oakland and San Francisco, are from the same Bay Area. In Satanic Gematria, the word earthquake equals 457. Now, this 457 is a prime number, and it's the 88th prime number. Now, the number 88 stood out in regards to Ricky Henderson because, once again, he was born in the city of Chicago, which rests right alongside the 88th Western Meridian. And then he went on to play most of his career in the state of California, which equals 88. He died right on the winter solstice, a phrase which also equals 88. And he died on the same day that we got the trailer for the new Superman film. Remember, Man of Steel. Well, Superman is played by actor Henry Cavill, or Cavill. And when you measure from Ricky Henderson's birth to Henry's, you get 8,898 days. So 3 8s in this measurement. Well, Henry Cavill's full name has gematria of 880 using prime numbers. When Man of Steel came out in 2013, the Man of Steel, Ricky Henderson, it had been 8,080 days since he broke the stolen base record. Furthermore, Ricky Henderson died 8,800 days after the release of How the Grinch Stole Christmas in the year 2000. And the Grinch was portrayed by actor Jim Carrey, whose name also equals 880 using trigonal numbers. Ricky Henderson died a span of 88 days after the anniversary of Dr. Seuss's death. And notice how his death was also 12,288 days after he broke the stolen base record. Now, in this measurement, not only does the 88 stand out, but so does the 122. Because the city of Oakland, California, just like San Francisco, rests alongside the 122nd meridian west. But check this out. Rickey Henderson got his record-breaking stolen base off of pitcher Tim Leary, who was born just 2 days before Rickey. And look at how old Tim Leary was for Henderson's record. 388 months and 8 days. So we get another triple 8 in that measurement. Now, the number 88 is a number connected to Mercury, a planet that takes 88 days to orbit the sun. The magic square of Mercury is 8 rows by 8 columns. Mercury's synodic period is also 115.88 days. And this all brings us back to the Roman god of Mercury, who was the god of thieves and travelers, which is perfect for a guy like Rickey Henderson, who is traveling to steal bases on the base paths. Mercury often portrayed with winged feet. And again, we get the car driving through the market in sped-up footage on the same day. I took some more notes here connecting Rickey Henderson to Dr. Seuss. The big one I want to point out is this. So, the Oakland A's played their final game in Oakland on September 26th of this year. Rickey Henderson died 85 days after that date. His death was also 85 days before the Pi Day total lunar eclipse on March 14th next year. Well, with capital letters, 85 is the value of Grinch. Dr. Seuss died during Brown lunation number 850, which has the 85 in it. Rickey Henderson was born the 85th prime number of days after the publication of the book How the Grinch Stole Christmas, first published on October 12th, just 1 year before Rickey was born. So once again, another absolutely undeniable synchronicity that is a little bit too mathematically refined for this to be some sort of random coincidence. To me, this is the type of thing that really points to the fact that we live in the Matrix, but I know everyone has their own interpretations of this. And it's certainly not impossible that a lot of these celebrities and athletes are getting killed. I like to take Occam's razor and use that approach when I look at this stuff. The way I see it, this happens with every single celebrity we see. There's always numerology that ties it together. And for everyone to be murdered by this code would be far too large of an operation for them to continuously get away with. If you want my opinion on someone who did probably get murdered, check out my video on Liam Payne, for instance, who died in Buenos Aires, Argentina, on a date that we expected a death connected to Pope Francis, who was born in Buenos Aires. But back at the comments, someone mentioned that they actually had a friend who knew Rickey, and that this death was very unexpected. And that does happen all too often, right? I mean, I'm not sure if anybody was aware that Rickey Henderson was sick. Of course, after they die, we come to find out that, they were ill for a year or two. And, a lot of people do genuinely want to keep their illness private. So you can't necessarily read into this and say for certain that, someone was murdered just because the numbers line up. Ricky never signed kids' balls. I didn't know that. That's just kind of a shame. Seems like the guy who was had a little bit of a unique ego to him. No, I've never actually done a proper decode on the film The Number 23. You know, we talked about Jim Carrey in this video, and Jim Carrey is actually someone I have a very mystical connection to. Now, Jim Carrey starred in the film The Number 23 back in 2007. And, you know, this always spooked me out because in this movie, he teaches Gematria. He tells everybody that letters are numbers, and that if you convert the alphabet to numbers, you will get fascinating alignments. And how strange is it, you know, I'm the guy who built this calculator, the Gematrinator, the one that most people use to share this type of knowledge. And what are the odds that my name, Derek Michael J. Takori, sums to 203, like the number 23? And when Jim Carrey was born, or I'm sorry, when I was born, look how old Jim Carrey was. 23 years old. Of course, the number 23, when you write it out, number 23 equals 223. And that's the release date of this film. February 23rd, 223. So, you know, honestly, I've been so spooked and fascinated by my own connections to Jim Carrey that I never actually looked at the movie very deep, because to me, it's not just planned synchronicity that goes into these. This is real life that's being played out through these allegories in film. Another thing to consider, too, is that Jim Carrey was born on January 17th. And when I first built the Gematrinator calculator, I spent an entire day when I was off of work from surgery that I had on my septum. And that day that I built the calculator, the first version, was January 17th. And it was Jim Carrey's 55th birthday that day in 2017. Right? So 55 years old. I built the calculator on a date with 55 numerology. And then I called my business Gematrinator 85, which is the 55th prime number. So I'm just telling you guys, there is a lot more to numerology and mysticism than a lot of people would have you believe. There is a vested interest to get you to believe in the worst, deepest conspiracies. And while there are many conspiracies that are damaging to the public and, you know, our bank accounts and our quality of life, I think some people go a little bit too far in using numerology as an explanation for things as a conspiracy. But again, these are just my theories. I encourage everyone to use their own free thinking when looking at this stuff. But just ask yourself, how is it all so possible? You know, I mean, no one told me to get into Gematria. It's just something that resonated with my being. You know, ever since I was 13, I was doing decodes. And I've done work on this in the past. I don't want to get too sidetracked at the end of this video here, but, you know, just an example that I've been doing this forever. And I started decoding in 1998, which is the year that the movie Pi came out. As well as, you know, The Matrix came out when I was 13 as well. And this is a real life thing from a notebook when I was 13 years old, trying to understand Mark McGwire's 61st home run and how he hit it on his dad's 61st birthday. And I didn't know this at the time, but his father's name, John, equals 61. So I don't know why I wrote in all caps back then, but I was a weird kid, you know, what can I say? So I'm going to leave everything there. I guess one more thing I want to mention is I talked about this pitcher, Tim Leary, earlier in the Decode. And when I mentioned this to my buddy, he pointed out, wow, is there a connection to Timothy Leary, an American psychologist? I guess you could call this guy a psychonaut of sorts. And he's the guy who started this Harvard psilocybin project along with Baba Ram Dass. And think about it, right? This is a guy who taught that, the mushroom can help you see the geometry of the universe, in essence. And to me, the fact that this picture was Tim Leary is just another example of how the universe expresses its geometric patterns through the people who inhabit the Earth. But maybe, you can call me crazy and unsubscribe. I don't know. That's all up to you. But for now, yeah, that's going to do it for this video. So check the links in the description for more. That'll do it for this one. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you all soon. See ya.